And we appear to be live.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Shearer, and I'm the president of the Albany Public Library Board of Trustees, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is our September board meeting. Sorry, the agenda was up a second ago. First, we have public comment.
There was one public comment that we received, but it was related to an incident in which has been handled. And there's a lot of confidential information in that. It's a little too deep to be sharing right now. And it's not a true board-related public comment. Obviously, I have to share it with you, anybody who wants to see it, but really off the record. But in the meantime, there was no other public comments that were made. If anyone from the public does wish to make a public comment, they're asked to send an email to publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. It's publiccoment@albanypubliclibrary.org. Or you can call and leave a voicemail at a number that is monitored, 518-290-6905. We ask that you state your name and your street address, and public comments will be read at 2 different times during this meeting, right now, and then once before adjournment.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next, we have a presentation by Tangible Development.
Hey, hi everybody, good to see you. Last time we were in front of this board, it was the fall of 2019. It was very cold, and it was pre any of us wearing masks or being in the space that we're in. So we're glad to be able to come back and give you an update on the project since we first seen you. Just as a reminder, my name is Liaison. I'm the Director of Service Delivery for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Consulting firm Tangible Development. And I'll let my colleague introduce herself, and we'll give you an update.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having us. Looking forward to sharing the results of our work together. I'm Sujata Chaudhary, founder of Tangible Development.
All right, so I know you've seen the output of our work together over the last year. I have a couple of slides that I'll put up in a second. Just a 10-minute overview of the journey that we've been on, a little bit about the outputs that we got to, and then saving some time for Q&A so that you can give us any feedback or have any questions about the work that we did. Let me transition here. Is that good to go? Can you all see that? Okay, great. So the journey, and I call it a journey because it has been a journey. We've all been on many journeys over the last year and a half or so. Our original timeline was December of 2019 to December of 2020. We started that journey as planned in December of 2019, and we got a couple of months into the work, and because of COVID and the needs of the organization took precedent, we paused our service from March till August, until late summer, early fall of 2020, where we resumed our project together. We shifted a little bit because the capacity of the organization to do the original statement of work wasn't in the same place that it was when we came up with the idea. So we pivoted a little bit, still within the same orbit of understanding organizational climate, organizational processes, and with the ultimate goals of trying to help Albany Public Libraries find a path to becoming more diverse, equitable, and inclusive along the way. So, like I said, we paused service in March of 2020 for obvious reasons. We restarted in the fall of 2020 and finished our work just a couple of months ago in spring of 2021.
It's 1 second. Can I have everybody hit their microphone buttons? We are getting feedback.
All right.
It should all show you. Thank you.
No worries. So here was our scope of work. We were trying to help enhance strategies to recruit and retain people of color in the workforce, of Albany Public Libraries: identify barriers to employment for underrepresented populations in the library, identify and eliminate factors that prevent the organization from being a fully inclusive organization, and create APL-specific mechanisms to address issues of bias. Really, all of this was creating APL-specific strategies to addressing the unique challenges of the organization. There's no one kind of cookie-cutter approach to this work. Our work was really as facilitators of a process that help the people that are on the ground every day doing the work identify what strategies will work for the organization within the constraints, which there were many in 2020 and still continue to be, to evolving in the diversity, equity, inclusion work. So here were the project activities that we did. A lot of project management. My colleague Julia, we talked regularly in terms of project management and all the moving pieces to doing the scope of work. Leadership sessions, we spent 22 hours with your leadership over the fall of 2020 into spring of 2021. A bulk of the work was done with your leadership group, and a testament to the time, energy, heart work, head work, visioning, and really on the ground strategizing that group of folks put into this work to see the outputs that y'all have been able to take a look at and talk about. So we did leadership readiness. Part of our work is not only just kind of goal setting for the work, but what is the soft skills also needed to maintain and develop a culture of equity and inclusion at the libraries from a leadership perspective. So we did some of that work as well as strategic diversity, equity, inclusion goal setting. We did a policy and practice analysis and review. So I took a look at some of your HR policies and practices to give some insight as we were doing this goal setting. We did focus groups with all staff and did some project communication support was part of the activities in this scope of work. We did focus groups with these 4 groups. Because I had spent a lot of time with leadership, we didn't do focus groups, particularly with that group, because I got to hear a lot of their ideas and their experiences, and I needed a bigger cross-section of what was going on with the organization. So we had focus groups for clerks and senior clerks, CECs, operations staff, and librarians and library assistants. This was an opt-in process, so we set up days and times and all virtual, and folks were able to opt into the process. We take our focus group data and try to quantify it so that for folks that are unfamiliar with qualitative research, it is different than quantitative research, but still is just as important to do. And this visual representation is how often and frequent the themes came up in the focus group. So we take verbatim notes in the focus groups and then thematize them and see how often the same thing is said over and over again. And so here are the findings from those focus groups. You'll see the themes that happen most often with most frequency was around communication and soliciting more input from across the organization, increasing cross-functional engagement, some role ambiguity with the pandemic, some feedback around opportunities or lack of opportunities for career growth and advancement, belief in some themes around that the staff of the library should reflect the communities that is served, and you'll see a direct line between that feedback and if you read the goals, the strategic goal document, there's a goal around diversifying staff. And then reception of feedback, increasing staff diversity, policies and procedures clarity. And you'll see the frequencies as they happen less and less as you go down this kind of chart. But wanted to make sure that any theme that populated was captured and shared, and the leadership team saw this as we walked into goal setting. When it came to the process of the goal setting, like I said, we did the leadership readiness sessions, the analysis and review that informed those goals. We did some design thinking ideation where we kind of just threw everything that came to mind out into the space, and then we edited it and tried to prioritize what makes sense for where the libraries are right now and the demands internally and externally that are going on for the organization. Prioritized, did editing, and wrote the draft that y'all have seen. Out of that, the format being there's goals and goal statements, focus areas, strategies, actions, a person ultimately responsible for seeing that the work is followed through with, not necessarily solely responsible for the work, but that's the point of contact for seeing the work through. And then its target completion date. In terms of our work and what we feel is responsible to doing this kind of work is helping clients identify something that is both tangible, like there's a clear outcome of what you're going to get out of that, And there's responsibility attached to it. There's accountability attached to it. A lot of times in lots of different organizations across types, we see a lot of commitment statements, a lot of words. We're going to do this. This is what we want to do. There aren't always actions attached to those goals. And so if you see in the document, there's goals and focus areas and strategies, and every single one of them has someone attached to it, so that at the end of the day, we can say, what's going on with this work? Where is it? If it's not moving along in the way that we planned, why or why not? How can we problem solve and move the idea and the goal forward? And so this is just a reiteration of what's in the document from a high level. There's a lot of detail in that document, but the 4 main goals being around equity of services and resources, a safe and inclusive environment for both patrons and staff culture, and a climate of accountability. We did a lot of work around, what does it mean to practice anti-racism and do anti-racism work at the libraries? And a big piece of that work is building in accountability within the staff culture, within leadership culture, so that it's okay to hold each other accountable to this work. And then the last goal that I mentioned earlier is diversity in both hiring and retention, which is really important given the community that you're in and the communities that you serve. So I don't know if y'all remember those that we were in front of a couple of years ago at this point almost. We use this diversity, inclusion, maturity model when it comes to organizations along these 5 kind of stopping points. They're not really stopping points. That's not the best word. Kind of like places to think about evolution from an organizational perspective, from the unaware organization to the disruptive or the trendsetter when it comes not necessarily to the legal landscape. This is not compliance in terms of the law, state or federal, but more so when it comes to diversity and inclusion, where are you in terms of organizational evolution? In this diversity, equity, inclusion, strategic planning, we charted the organization kind of hovering around compliant, around diversity and inclusion issues. Post, the way that the goals are articulated in the plan, really think that the organization can move beyond compliant to strategic, and then with the work that's already being done and the goals that are articulated in the plan, moving through strategic to integrated. At the very least, I believe you could get to integrated pretty quickly with the goals that are identified in the plan, and the kind of momentum that I experienced from your leadership and from the kind of knowledge level and the commitments from the staff that are already part of the organization. I think it's up to y'all and up to Scott and the team how much further into that disruptive place you want to take the organization based on many different factors. But I believe that the libraries are on a good trajectory to getting to be an integrated organization with the goals that are articulated in the plan. It's just about how you operationalize it. So that is a high-level overview. I'm happy to answer any questions about the process and anything related to the work that we did.
And don't forget, if you're speaking, you just need to hit your button while you're speaking. And then.
Thank you for that presentation, LB. It's nice to have you both back with us in person again. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have one question in reference to the results. Did you get that? Is that in the document? I was looking for it. I can't really find it.
So the results are part of the document that was provided, I believe, meeting before our last, that had to do with us suggesting that this become integrated into our strategic plan. And now, could you make the presentation available in a PDF and send it to Rebecca so that we can put it up?
Emailed you that
Awesome.
request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess question for our staff. I know I asked during the last meeting because the goals and strategies were reorganized. Did they get reorganized? Because, okay.
So we're asking for the board to take this on as a discussion in October, where Sarah's brought up some points about the new state standards. So there are some things that we're going to do. There's also interest by the staff to say, why wait? Can we do some of these things before it's integrated into the strategic plan Tom made that comment as well when it came around some of the work that the personnel committee is doing. So my hope is that we all take in, we'll resend the results that we presented a few months ago so that everybody can see it. We'll share this presentation, and we'll also share some insight into what we need to do next for the strategic plan, how these things can be incorporated in, but also some things that the staff will be asking to do before the strategic plan gets completed, because we will have to do some outward facing focus groups for the community to be in line with the state minimum standards.
Then do you mind, before it gets sent out, just reorganizing the objectives so that they're falling within the attached goal? Because last time it was kind of, thank you. Any other questions?
I have one going off of that. So so in the PowerPoint, there was a note that you did some analysis of like board policies and the bylaws, I believe.
Not board policy, HR policy.
Oh, HR policies. Okay, that answers my questions then. Thank you.
I was wrong, and I assumed that there was going to be a lot of questions. So if LB is looking at everybody surprised that was my own, I missed on that one.
Happy to field any questions post-meeting, any clarifications or anything. I'll send the report, the slides. And thank you for your time and for letting us work with the libraries. It was a joy. Actually, this was my first client. I met with y'all the second day of work. Sujata put me in front of your staff, and it's been symbolic full cycle for me. So I'm really appreciative of being in front of you tonight and sharing the work that we did. And I look forward to seeing the work that you continue to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
That I didn't have questions.
In person.
Next, we have our consent agenda. We have the minutes and the operating check register. Is there a motion? Trustee McCarthy makes a motion.
I second.
Trustee Pryor seconds. Any further discussion before we vote on the motion? Seeing none, we can all go to board docs and cast our votes.
Trustee Robinson? Yes. Thank you. Trustee Wright? Thank you.
The motion carries. Next item on our agenda is finance. Adam, if you want to take us through that.
All right, sure. So the reports this month cover July 2021, which was the first month of the 21-22 fiscal year. So as of July 31st, both the revenue and expenditure totals are approximately 8% of the approved 21-22 budget. At this time last year, our expenditure totals were slightly higher, about 9% of the 2021 budget, due in large part to the fact that we had over 200,000 in encumbrances that were expensed in July 2020. And just a reminder that we did not carry over any encumbrances from the prior year this time around. So the encumbrances column that was on the previous reports has been removed. One area where the expenditures are a little high in July was occupancy costs. It's at 14% of the 21-22 budget, primarily because a number of maintenance service contracts covering the 21-22 period were prepaid in 2021 and expensed here as part of the 21-22 year. And then also there is a new report this month in lieu of the balance sheets. So this is the cash and investment summary report. So this is a summary of our monthly banking activity in our cash and our investment accounts. This type of report is more in line with what typically would be included as part of a treasurer's report. Based on just what we've seen from other libraries, we think this is best practice. So I think this report just gives you a good idea of our cash flow month to month. So if you have any questions about that report, please don't hesitate to ask. There were no capital fund expenditures during July 2021. However, $80,000 was transferred from the general account into the capital account. So again, if anyone has any questions on any of these reports, I'm happy to try and address them.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Trustee McCarthy.
What is the best way to think about the new investment summary report? Like, is it a point in time look, or is it showing how things changed over the month?
Yeah, essentially, it's essentially the results of the bank statements that we would receive at the end of every month. So it just shows the banking activity throughout the month. Essentially, I mean, in my mind, that was sort of the most important part of the balance sheets, just reviewing the cash balances. So this gives you a little clear picture of exactly what's coming in and going out from each account each month.
So, like, the cash balance on June 30th as compared to July 31st, we get that by adding up disbursements and transfers?
So it's essentially just pulling the data straight from the bank statements.
I know, but like, is it disbursements plus transfers on this graph, on this chart? Does that equal the difference between the
Right,
beginning and the
yeah.
end? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm really basic in reading these. Okay, and which of these accounts earn interest?
Well, the checking accounts, the cash accounts earn very small amounts of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Our primary source of interest income is the KeyBank Capital Markets account. That's our primary investment account. So when our various investments mature, like the column you'll see, it says investment results, that $1,400, that would be recorded as interest income.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Adam?
May I ask one question? If this is cash, and how much does the bank insure cash? Isn't this higher? So FDIC?
This is well in advance, well in excess of FDIC amounts, but you have a tax pledge collateral agreement in effect with your bank to fully insure it in accordance with the general municipal law.
And does it make sense to have it as a cash balance and not in something like a CD that roll over every few months?
So a lot of what we have in the KeyBank Capital Markets account, that's CDs and municipal bonds primarily. So, I mean, the cash in these 4 cash accounts are really just designated for operating throughout the year. So, I mean, that's sort of what we need to, I suppose in theory, we could tie up more cash in investments and take it out as needed, but.
And historically, the library's strategy on those 4 accounts is that there's too much activity in them to have that level of transfer back and forth. You're actually putting more at risk by doing the transfers. The capital markets account was set up, and of course, this is at a relatively low balance because you're at a relatively low balance time of year. In a few months, you'll have much higher balances, but that capital markets accounts complies with General Municipal Law, Section 11, and with respect to all of the investments that it's allowed to have, and it maximizes the investments that you're allowed to have as a public entity. So, I mean, you could do some tweaking, as Adam said, but this has been looked at and structured by your finance folks for at least 10 years.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just like getting used to seeing this in a new format. What should we, is the only thing this really tells us is how much cash we have on hand each month?
I mean, essentially, yes, I would say that is one of the key takeaways. I think it's probably also worthwhile to pay attention to the investment account activity. Possibly the capital fund account activity, if there was an unusually high amount of activity there, that might be worth noting. But yeah, essentially it's how much cash we have on hand.
Okay, thanks, yeah.
And again, just as a reminder, this is an addition.
Yeah.
So all of the balance sheets and everything in here, and this has been something that's been requested by board members in the past. The board member who requested it the most is no longer on the board. So if you see Karen, find out what you wanted. And also this really is in line with best practice of what other libraries do. That's one of the reasons why Adam and I brought it to Tom to just include it, because it's something that's been requested, but also part of best practice.
Yeah.
The balance sheet is still there. I always think it's important for the board to look at the balance sheet, to look at the spending.
Actually, Scott, the balance sheets. I think the idea was that this was supposed to be in lieu of the balance sheet.
Okay.
Not that we couldn't include balance sheets if the board wants that.
That's what I mean, not the balance sheet, the budget report. My apologies. We're all getting words mixed up. So what I think is important for the board to look at is the treasurer's report to show the trend in spending and how much has been spent on those lines.
From a financial reporting perspective, this document does give you the same information the balance sheet does, although it's restricted to the 6 bank accounts. Although that's your current assets anyway. What's interesting about this though, and if you look at it closely, it allows you to see the change in those accounts month to month and the destination of those funds month to month. So if you look, and Adam sort of explained this a little bit, but in transfers, you're seeing 430 leave the general account because it's going into the payroll account and to the capital fund account, right? So 350 and 80 equals the 430. That's the transfer back. Same thing with respect to the capital market activity. You're seeing the 150 deposit coming in. It's coming in as a withdrawal disbursement from the merchant account, and then it's going back out as a withdrawal from the capital markets account into a receipt into that same merchant account. The only thing this doesn't show you is the time. and what the aggregated number of transactions within those categories are. But this is a lot more information than just a simple balance sheet's giving you, because it's showing you the activity over the course of the month as well.
Does anybody else have any other finance related questions or comments? Thank you, Adam. Thank you for working on the sheet.
Sure, no problem.
Next up, we have committees and liaison reports. First up is trustees reporting out and upcoming events. If anybody has anything to share.
I'm gonna make a plant hanger. There's an event I'm really excited about. I think it's out of Delaware.
Nice.
I went to the Delaware Farmers Market last Tuesday and got some sausage from the Martins people, and it was very good.
Tim Burke wrote a wonderful op-ed piece or a commentary about the importance of the federal Build America's Library Act. And if people get the Times Union, it's really worth a look. I learned more about a mastodon than I thought possible.
Last month, I attended the comic book fair over at Pine Hills. My children enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more. I was looking out the comics for them, so it was nice.
Just a reminder for everybody, if you could speak up a little bit, because even with the mics, you still got to project across the room. And I think that's getting a little muffled.
Are you able to hear me? Oh, okay. I just want to add that I, as well as Dr. Susan Burkhart, were the lead applicant in a new school coming to Albany, the Nurses Middle College. It's going to be a high school, a charter school, and it did get approved about a week and a half ago. So we're moving forward with that. We're looking for a location. We're very happy to have this high school that is going to have a mission centered around healthcare. And we look forward to partnering with the library as well. So I think it's going to be great for the Capital Region, and it's modeled after the Rhode Island Nurses Middle College. So thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we'd be remiss not to recognize you for being in the paper and all the awards. It fills me with joy. Thank you for caring so much about the community.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on our report is the UHLS report.
Okay. Technology. Okay, there was no meeting in August, but the committee, the trustees, we met on last Wednesday on September 8th. Live activity paused for 2022 through 2026 was approved and submitted to the state. How do you say that? Y'all? No, I was going to say Upper Hudson Library System, but I don't want to keep saying that. Okay. Will continue to operate under the current free direct access plan until a new plan is approved. We paid off the mortgage in August as was approved by the trustees, but we did have a second tenant decide to not renew their lease. So we're looking, we're engaging a commercial realtor to identify additional new tenants for the building. We just had our financial review completed and presentation was made to the trustees. The grant applications to New York State are in play. They're being reviewed by the service committee. The Upper Hudson Library System also submitted an application for improvement of its parking lot, but we had 10 member libraries apply for funding. There's monies coming down the pipe, federal monies, $6.2 million will be available to facilitate digital equity inclusion and for encouraging library and museum partnerships. The letter that Sarah mentioned a few moments ago, Tim spoke about it at the meeting. He was actually recruited as part of a national plan to call attention and to the need for support for the Build Back Better Act. So he was actually recruited to do that. And they're doing this all over the country to try to generate support for that act. The website project is in process. The staff are working to change the look and feel of the website and do some updates with regard to content. And I guess what we want to do is to recognize that they are continuing in the midst of all the craziness to do consulting work with member libraries. So they're working with trustees, directors, and staff. And for the last report period, the libraries that they worked with included Cohoes, Cheney, Grafton, Menands, Post and Kill, Valley Falls, and Royersville. The anti-racism task force is busy as well. They have recruited, they've done outreach to private consultants, and they've gotten back a couple of proposals that they're very interested in, and they're looking to make a decision on who they're going to be working with to do that work. The speaker series on racial equity that began last month, they completed the 21-day equity challenge and evaluation that's been done, and they're looking to see what they'll do with the learnings that were accrued for that. And with regard to Project Ready, they have 17 participants who are working their way for that through the curriculum for reimagining equity and access for diverse youth. We've got new committee assignments. I'm now working with the service committee. Last year I was working with finance, now I'm working with service. The treasurer's report and purchase journal for August and September were approved. And we've decided to meet virtually next month for October. The trustees have decided to play it by ear. So each month we'll decide whether we'll have in-person meeting or we'll do virtual. So basically that was it. Those guys have been very busy. I'm very proud to be associated with them. Their passion and you know, what they're trying to do for all the libraries is important. And you need to know that they hold APL in high regard. You know, you spoke, fondly. So I just need for you to know that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Arlene. It definitely sounds like they've been busy. Thank you for keeping us up on it all. The next committee we have reporting is personnel.
Thanks, Sarah. We had a pretty busy personnel committee meeting this month. We reviewed slight change to the way that we do the Director of Human Resources role, breaking it up into sort of two positions, Director of Human Resources and a Director of Finance position. So we reviewed those two job descriptions, and I think those we're still working on. We're not ready to bring them to the full board. Right? But yeah, no. Yeah. Sorry, we always do these like a couple of weeks, and then I'm like, one thing that we established in this meeting that I think is going to be really useful for the Personnel Committee is we're creating a calendar similar to what P&G uses in order to kind of have a date for review of items for personnel. There are a couple of things that personnel is responsible for reviewing either yearly or every 3 years. And we realized that we were losing institutional knowledge as people change from committee to committee. So we're going to create a grid similar to what P&G uses. And we're going to begin with, we can't remember when the last time we did a review of staff job descriptions and wage ranges was. So now is a good moment to do that because that's supposed to be done once every 3 years. And so we're beginning with that, and other things happen annually, like executive director review, and we always say, oh, we'd really like to update the questions, but we realize that too late in the year and don't have time to do it. So now we can say we review the questions at, we actually haven't established a date for that one yet, but let's say January, not on the record. And there are a number of other tasks that we're kind of figuring it out as we go along, but we figure as this committee does its work, we can kind of create the grid and say when we've done that item in order to pass it on, since a number of us are in our 5th year, our seniors, so to speak, on the board. Super seniors, yes. The other thing that we did that we wanted to let the board know is we've begun drafting a letter to civil service. A number of you are probably aware that we have been looking for as long as I've been on the board to advocate the civil service the need to make our part-time clerk positions non-competitive. This is something that's not scandalous in the library world. Other libraries have done it. We have a hard time retaining part-time clerks, in large part because the exam does not reflect the position. It's a very sort of like secretarial type of skill set that is not related to the highly customer service role of the civil service, or of the part-time clerks. And so we haven't made much headway in the 4 years that we've been trying. And so we thought that we as a board might draft a letter so that we could sort of add our voices to the advocacy that our staff has been doing towards this goal. So Sarah, Tom, and I have begun writing it. We might be ready to share with the rest of the board to I think we're just about there. So perhaps after this meeting, we can share the rest of you on it to get your feedback, because we'd like to encourage, if you feel comfortable with it, the entire board to sign the letter, to send it on to the Department of Civil Service. So that's what we've been up to. Any questions for the Personnel Committee? It's a good one.
Thank you, Jenna. Next up, we have a report by the Policy and Governance Committee.
We met yesterday and we're working on a number of policies. And we forwarded some policies to committees on the board that have more expertise. I think it was a good meeting. We had a lot of comments and suggestions.
Sorry about that. We had a lot of good comments and suggestions, and we will have a report for next month. I think a number of the policies are going to be forwarded on to Bob to make sure we're on the right track before we share them with everyone. Did I forget anything? Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for any of the members of the Policy and Governance Committee? Thank you, Trustee Dallas, and thank you to P&G committee members. Next up, we have the Executive Director's Monthly Report.
August saw no positive cases or quarantines among staff. The library now operates under under updated protocols outlined in the continuation of service plan when the CDC recognizes Albany County as high transmission. Delaware hosted the first of 3 APL sessions for the Branching Out Initiative. This was on August 31st, with live performances celebrating the unveiling of a traveling mural created by teens under the facilitation of the artist collective Amplified Voices. Just want to remind everybody that this program was funded partially by a grant from the American Library Association and also some underwriting by the Friends and Foundation of the Albany Public Library as well. This was a really great event. The video is on our YouTube channel. We'll be doing 2 additional unveilings on the 21st of this month at the Bach branch and then the 6th of October at the Pine Hills branch. The mural is still in front of Delaware. So if you are out and about and want to see a really great piece of art done by young people, I really suggest going there. One of my kids, when I was a librarian, their children participated in the program. So it was kind of nice. The library has completed the first phase of reintroducing desktop PCs. And I'm very happy to announce that the House solar panel project is finally complete. So I can stop reporting on it. Monthly statistics, all metrics for the library district have moved in a positive direction. We continue to see growth, even though typically in the summers, we start to see a little bit of a dip, but we have not. But I want to remind the board, we're still not at pre-pandemic levels, but I think we'll get there as we've expanded hours over the last week. And the good news is circulation is up 8% over last year, and that's physical circulation, which is always nice to see. And we're seeing transactions hold steady as well. There were 20 incident reports filed in August. It seems high if you're looking at the graphics. However, that's actually under the norm for August. And only 1 incident included a threat of physical violence that was here, but handled very well by our community engagement clerks. And I'll open the floor to any questions before informational items.
Are there any questions for Scott?
You wrote that there were 20 incidents reports in August. Isn't that more than normal?
So since we started reporting it, so if you look at the graphical, we're having a problem with internal knowledge management, and we don't have the full numbers for August of pre-pandemic 2019. So if you look at the graphical presentation, they look really high, but I'd be willing to get for probably below what we normally get in August of any given year. We're still working on going back and trying to find the number of incident reports for pre-pandemic years, so you will see that graphic change. But no, 20 is pretty normal. We had a fairly quiet month and we were happy about it. And also it's important to look at the fact that the majority of them weren't threats. Some of them were EMT calls, some of them were just behavior issues that were taken care of and relatively quiet. So in reality, our August was quiet.
Okay. Thanks.
I would be willing to bet when we finally can find the numbers for 2018, you will see that'll be reflected in that report.
Just a quick question in reference to the ones that did have their privileges revoked. What kinds of behavior are the reason that they had their privileges revoked? Like, what did that?
It typically is repetitive policy breaking. So in other words, they were asked to do something and they refused to comply, then came back again and refused to comply. Two of them were mask related. And I believe, I'll have to look, but some had to do with threatening staff.
Okay.
Two of them were mask related.
So is that just for a certain period of time?
Fair period
or-
of time. So what we can do is we can review the process we go through for banning people.
Mhm.
Typically, it's 1 month, and they have the ability to write the board
Mhm.
and say, and at request for them to go through the process
Mhm.
to get their library privileges back.
Mhm. Were these typically adults or children?
All adults. The
All
kids,
adults, okay.
I'll be honest, the kids and masks, the kids are really good about masks.
Okay.
This really comes down to adults, and a lot of these incident reports are actually repeat incident reports about the same person or
Thank you.
you're welcome. And that's a great question for a new board member, so I'm glad you asked.
I have a question. Since you mentioned the solar panels at Howe being completed, that reminded me about the Green Sustainable Report we got a couple of years ago. Remind me, that was separate from our strategic plan. I believe we were going after a green sustainable certification. Where are we? Did we get that?
So
or where's that process?
that is currently a very loaded question.
Whoops.
In regards to some things that are going on in the library community. And we are trying to figure out where that currently lives. We believe it currently lives under the Long Island Library Association now. So we're going to communicate with the board. We're uncomfortable with some things associated with that project. It is part of our strategic plan. We do have a committee which is handling that. However, our participation in the New York State Sustainability Initiative, like many libraries, is right now in question due to things outside of our control.
There's also a huge portion of it that is HVAC related, and with the pandemic, as we know, a lot of initiatives we had to take to control the pandemic go against green services. So they're trying to also rewrite some of their regulations and standards based off of what's been happening with the pandemic.
Thank you both for the update, and I apologize for asking a loaded question.
We're just trying to figure out how to talk about it without.
No, I just remember it being such a huge undertaking. You said it's part of our strategic plan. I felt that it was almost the size of the strategic plan. I mean, I just remember getting the report on it, and it was a huge, huge undertaking. So does anybody else have any better questions?
No, it was a good question. It's just hard to answer.
Moving. Us. Any other questions? Yes.
How are we in hiring staff and the hours open?
We're at full hours, as the board approved. We're at good staffing for right now. We're open our first Sundays at Arbor Hill and Bach. That did not go without a little bit of turbulence. Kudos to Melanie, who's the administrator on call. And we're open and we're staffed and we're scheduled. You know, outside of one bump with one branch this Sunday, we're adequately staffed.
And I want to give a shout out to my IT team because we had a equipment failure that brought down the computer system. And they all hands on deck for all of them to try to get something up and running. And within 24 hours, we were back up. So I commend them for that.
Yes, Trustee White.
Any resistance for staff?
So we are, from our report last month, I forgot what the exact number was, but we're at about 70% vaccination. We're lucky. Most of our staff seem very open to vaccination. I have to look, we're still running. We're still actually running that poll, and I got to get the new numbers for that poll, but no, most people seem very willing to be vaccinated. I know that we've sent out interest. We're trying to get at least 10 people who are not vaccinated to be interested in maybe do vaccination in-house. But right now we don't have the 10 because we seem like most of our staff are vaccinated. So much so that today I got asked about the flu vaccine. So there's interest in our flu vaccine clinic. So I trust our staff to be fairly well vaccinated, and we're going to continue to promote it. And also we have to see what the new federal laws say about, we are an organization of over 100. So it may be mandatory. It won't be mandatory. Okay.
Effective because it'll be OSHA. doesn't apply.
Okay.
Now, what could happen is PESH could. In all likelihood, that rule won't apply to the library directly, but it may be extended to the library by the state.
So we may be at a point where we're having a discussion about mandatory vaccinations. But so far, I mean, when it comes to all of the safety plan, we are very compliant. We've had maybe one or two blips every once in a while, but nothing major. Everybody seems very compliant with following the safety plan.
Following up on that, would there be random COVID testing? Not just people who choose not to be vaccinated, but the whole staff?
If that's a possible scenario, I believe we'd have to bring that to labor management and have a conversation with the union about it. And I'd be interested to see how that conversation goes.
Information. Information.
It's on the agenda. I was waiting.
Sorry, I heard about it and I thought someone was going to say something. Informational items memo under the director's report?
Yes.
Okay.
So the audit is nearly done. I'm guessing early mid this month. The field work is done. They're just contacting us for additional information. And that's just an information item, but there will be a presentation later. North Albany, we're always interested in North Albany. Silas and I stopped by Sunday to peer through the windows to see what was going on. The general construction is moving along well. Thanksgiving is currently the goal for final cleaning and turnover to APL. However, that may change. I always remind people of construction almost always gets in the way. There are significant supply chain issues, as most of us know, and there's some concern about the new entrance. It's a kind of put together entrance, and there are some concerns about that. So we're still looking at, January, February is the opening date for that branch. But we'll continue to update everybody as that comes along. But there are photos attached with my information items that kind of show you the new bathroom being built and the fact that the wall was taken down. And we did pick out carpet, and then had the carpet we picked out vetoed, and we're given one option to pick from the carpet. But we understand that school's paying the bill, so covering the cost of the carpet. So
We went from standard light to standard dark.
yes, which is always interesting. New York State Department of Library Development Construction Aid. Remember that the facilities committee went through and picked out projects. Some okay news on this front. First, the 90% option. So there was a bill that was passed, still sitting on the governor's desk. There's a bill that went through that provides so that school libraries that operated within school districts that are eligible for school lunches, which ours is, would be eligible for 90% coverage of their construction projects. I believe someone was involved in the office that put that together. So did I get it right? Sort of. Okay.
I don't know what it's doing on the record.
Okay. So maybe it's not. Okay. So so we will not be eligible for these projects for them to be 90%, which is not a surprise to me. And sorry, it kind of has to do with Department of Library Development, I think, making decisions on how they're going to really roll that out. And then the other part is the director of the Upper Hudson Library System has reached out to me, and as usual, the ask is bigger than the amount of money that they have. I actually agree with the way UHLS handles it, which is try to impact as many projects as possible. And we have hedged our bets in a way so that if we don't get the full amount, we can come back as a committee and take a module off of the projects. So right now it's not looking like 75%, but it could be as we adjust things depending on what UHLS actually finally gives us. So probably what's going to come out of this is UHLS is going to come to us and say, this is how much we can give you for these projects. And the facilities committee is going to need to meet and do it rather quickly to say, okay, do we want to do the full project and pay for more of it out of our capital fund? Or do we want to take one of these modules out of the project and that'll cover a good amount of the cost? So that's pretty much how we've handled it for years. And I think this year we kind of built it in so there's a little more of a process to it. And remember, almost all of that is for here and almost all of it is HVAC to improve the HVAC here.
Two things. First, it's the Division of Library Development. Second, if all of the allocations are not spent in the other systems, money does get put back into the pot. So it is possible we could see more money, even if we reduce it.
Yeah, and that is something that we've had, I believe, two projects, the Delaware project and maybe even the Howe project, both saw an increase in the amount of money that we got that was closer to the 75%. Thank you, Sarah.
So how often in recent years have we been knocked down to 50%?
Almost every year we
Oh,
get knocked
really?
down to 50%. And then we readjust the project. And then as Sarah's pointed out, we've often gotten money from other library systems that there was one year that UHLS couldn't spend all the money and actually was generous, but usually UHLS is a receiver of additional funding.
Okay, thanks.
Friends and Foundation of the Albany Public Library Gala. The Friends and Foundation planned to scale down their Literary Legends Gala at the Pine Hills branch. Much of the event will be held outside and also hybrid, so also there will be a virtual opportunity. And FAPL plans to require vaccination for attendance. And we will have an item later on the agenda for closing Pine Hills early, as we usually do, to allow that event to go on. PEG Studio, I'm on the PEG board. Melanie was on the PEG board for a little while as well. As many of you, some of you super seniors on the board know that in the beginning of my tenure, there were serious issues with the public access channel and the public access studio. I want to say that they've done a remarkable job of turning the operation of that studio around, not only producing more shows, working very well with our staff, and it's so quiet, we sometimes forget they're there. And it no longer smells like marijuana. So, we're very happy in the way it's operating. The bad news is one of the people who's responsible for that, Kirk Daniels, he wants to retire. He wants to retire from his retirement job. He is still going to be involved in the studio, but they are looking for a studio coordinator. And I've put the RFP in the board packet. So if you know anybody out in the community who knows some production, has some production skills, please share it with them, because we don't want to see that program slip backwards. Kirk's just done, the board's done an amazing job. Mary Rozak has been the board president. She's done an incredible job. And we don't want to see it slide backwards, because that board, which I said, we're having a hard time finding a replacement for Kirk. I also want Kirk to spend more time with his family and enjoy retirement. And then there was a letter from a patron about our COVID protocols. We've attached both the letter. It was addressed to me and the board was CC'd. I've attached that letter. We've attached that letter and my response to that individual. Although they didn't provide me contact information, we're trying to catch this individual while they're in the branch and using the branch. Some of it was some really great feedback that I think we're making some adjustments because of, and then some of it was some, I believe, misinformation that they need to have corrected, as if we're all 6 branches are all following the same protocol. This individual believed that was not the case. We are ADA compliant. We make sure to have seats if somebody's using the computer or reading the paper, and this person didn't understand that head count is actually a part of the CDC recommendations when it comes to virus mitigation. And that's it. I didn't have any questions from board members outside of just some really, Sarah sent me an email. We kind of went back and forth. It was some inside baseball kind of stuff, I would define it as, and no comments from the public. We continue, when someone has a complaint, we continue to hand out the contact sheet at the entrance of all libraries. This is the first time we haven't gotten any feedback about masks. Usually we get a little bit of positive, but I think people are just used to wearing masks at this point, and the kids have been awesome about it. It's just some of the adults we struggle with sometimes.
Any other questions for Scott on the informational items?
Scott, I actually don't think the RFP for the PEG coordinator is in the packet.
Okay, I'll make sure that's.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Any other questions or comments on any of the informational items? Seeing none, first order of new business is the FAPL MOU.
So this is. We are currently working on user agreements with partner organizations, as we know, as we've been doing with several groups that specifically use this building. This agreement is to codify the relationship and clearly outline both parties' responsibilities. Attached is a draft agreement with the Friends and Foundation of the Albany Public Library, or FAPL, to use office space at our Washington Avenue branch, as they have since the foundation hired a part-time executive director. This is for office space and some storage space. We do not charge for this space. This agreement is still under review by legal and in draft format. However, we ask the trustees to consider a vote at this meeting unless legal has substantial issues with the draft.
No, there's a couple minor changes that if the board is comfortable with, you could approve it tonight. One is the under 4I, there's still a paragraph dealing with required reports, and I don't think you intend to have this group be required reports, right? So we would strike 4I, we would strike Schedule B, and under 11B, we don't have all of the insurance boxes checked, and I just want to make sure that that's intentional.
We've had a similar agreement in past years, right?
They've never had this agreement, but this agreement is modeled on all of the other license agreements you have for other users of the spaces.
And do we think their board wants to do this and is going to do it?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
They've got 2 yes votes.
Under insurance, I see that the workers' comp box is checked, but the umbrella liability policy isn't checked. We're not requiring a general liability policy for a space in the building.
I think we should.
No. You're requiring general liability of 2 million, 4 million. The question is did you intentionally uncheck the umbrella liability? It may be that it's okay. It's, those are add-ons. A is required. Everybody has to have that in order to sign a license agreement. B, you just check the ones that you think are necessary. Obviously, they have employees. They need to check workers' comp. In fact, we had an issue with them that we had to get cleaned up a few years ago because they weren't carrying it. I don't want to provide guidance to the board on the umbrella liability policy. It's really something that you should talk to your insurance broker about. But given the nature of the activity that they use, it's probably not necessary. They're not engaged in high risk activity, and the only people that they're using it for are a few volunteers and an employee or two, which you have workers' comp. To my knowledge, they don't have vehicles, and to my knowledge, you're not generally requiring people to provide owner's protective liability insurance for use of the buildings. But again, they're there if you want to require them.
Thank you. I missed general and A, so that's good.
So with the two edits that I'm suggesting, and perhaps the caveat that staff should just run it by insurance professional, this one could be approved tonight if the board's comfortable.
And those two amendments would just be striking paragraph 4I, the reporting requirement, and then schedule B that coincides with that.
Correct. Actually, the one other question that I think the executive director was still considering was whether or not to change the normal business hours access or not. Scott, I don't know if you came to a conclusion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can give them some expanded hours. So I know Lex does have to do some work on the weekends and does some past 8 o'clock, I think 8 o'clock. These more are in line with when we're open, where we're comfortable being here. So there's that.
They do have some events that do run past.
Yeah, but they don't do it in their office.
Okay, gotcha.
This is probably tangential, and I should know it as chair of P&G, but I don't. Did Albany Public a non-alcoholic building, all the branches?
No, we have food. At the
I
Gallo.
don't think you have a policy
there's
that
alcohol
specifies that.
at the
I'm
Gallo.
not aware of it if you do.
Yeah.
This is Albany. There's no policy
We're not dry.
for alcohol and all. And I mean, we serve it at events.
So the policy needs just to be, okay.
No, I don't think so. It's possible. I mean, that board likes, they're a fun board, but I think they're going to be meeting virtually for a while anyway.
And see Lex like having wine lunch in the office. No.
And this is just for the FAPL office space, not for FAPL events or, okay. So a slightly more limited scope.
You need a motion, Sarah?
I do.
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve, given the caveats Bob suggested.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? I guess my only question in terms of hours, so we would approve this, and are we giving you guys the flexibility to expand that, or?
I would hope so, yes.
Okay, okay. So we can approve it without it being finalized, just we give you the authority. Okay. It works. I just want to make sure it's getting done how we're envisioning it. Any other questions on the motion?
They're looking into the umbrella as well, right?
So I was going to answer if you guys want to answer.
You can answer.
Okay. No, so when I asked about the umbrella, I didn't realize that a general liability policy was already required in paragraph A above that. So I'm okay with that because it's requiring a general liability policy. And then the additional that they added on, the boxes checked for is workers' comp on top of that. So I don't feel,
I'd still like to reach out to our insurance carriers, just because insurance has changed dramatically in the last year and a half. So before we make any decision on those insurance categories, I would like to reach out to our insurance carrier first, just to make sure.
Thank you.
any other questions? Seeing none, we can go into board docs and vote.
Trustee Wang votes yes.
Motion carries. Sorry, I have my screen minimized. Okay, yep, sorry, I see unanimous, but I don't see the vote. But I believe the motion carries. Next item under new business is the Albany Housing Authority Wi-Fi renewal.
Successfully implemented a project, Housing Authority,
Your mic.
to bring additional public Wi-Fi spots to the city's underserved areas. This is a renewal of our agreement. We have funding to continue this program for about another 2 years. We're not asking for any board action right now. We wanted to put it as new business so that it's looked over by the board. This agreement is still in draft format, being reviewed by legal. We asked the trustees to consider moving this to unfinished business for October meeting, but we're welcoming questions now because I think it would be good to have a discussion about it, or at least provide an opportunity for board members to ask questions.
Scott, so there are 4 locations now, right? Okay, so with those locations, what would be are we adding additional locations or just maintenance of the ones that we currently have?
I'm going to hand this over to Melanie because she's the point person.
Essentially, we have the 4 locations now, and we're considering that phase 1. So this agreement for the time being covers the continuation of phase 1. Each site is another access point that needs to be purchased and another monthly service charge. And that increases our costs significantly per site. So we have applied for 2 separate funding sources, one through IMLS, I believe, and the other through the digital. We're getting ready to do through the digital inclusion, or there's the other one, the Schmidt Foundation. No, that's not IMLS. That's a separate one. A lot of funding came popping up in the last 2 months. So we're pretty much throwing this project at all of them because we would like the IMLS grant would allow us to just expand to other locations, to additional locations. The digital inclusion one with the Schmidt Foundation would allow us to expand to other locations and to purchase Chromebooks to hand out to residents is what we're looking for. It's a 2-part grant project, essentially from the CEO of Google, who is looking to, the easy way to describe it is he's looking to kind of start the next Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he picked New York to start his philanthropy.
So really determining on what funding is available is determined on the contract in reference to if we're going to just maintain what we already have or additional locations.
Correct.
So is it the $6,000 a year to maintain the 4 locations we have now?
Correct.
So do we have that?
We have that.
So at the very least, it's just maintaining what we already have.
Correct.
Do we know the capacity and the range of, do we have those stats of what it covers?
So they are on the outside of the buildings. Obviously with Wi-Fi, you'll get a little bit of a signal inside, but not much because of the concrete diminishes the signal. We did get I believe they're 300-foot radius. So from wherever the point is, it's a 300-foot arc that they access to. That's why we did outside, because if we did inside, it would decrease that because of the structure of the building. That's why we are looking for additional funding through other sources that would allow us to put some maybe in their community spaces inside the building. Obviously for the more inclement weather months that they're not as accessible for. And the Digital Inclusion Act also, or the Digital Inclusion Grant with the Schmidt Foundation would also provide digital literacy classes. So we would do that as well. In addition to that, the one thing you'll note, my two comments about this, one of the issues we had, and it's not really an issue, just a little hiccup that we had with it, is the original agreement stated that we would do all installation. And that is very difficult for us to do on somebody else's property. So we would like it to change that they would handle in coordinating the installation. So any of the wiring, instead of going through us to then go through them to set up the appointments to wire their building, would just go through them. We would still pay for it, but it would be coordinated through them. And then the access points need to be mounted to the wall by 4 screws. And our staff is really uncomfortable putting screws into somebody else's building. So it's a really simple process. We don't like touching other people's buildings when we don't have to.
So who's done the installation thus far? Has it been us? Or
it has been us.
or we're just not comfortable doing it,
Yep.
essentially?
Because we actually did, I think we ran into one hiccup where there was a miscommunication and it was slightly like by inches off of where they wanted it. And we also had to pay for some repainting. So, or we installed something with a paint color somehow that wasn't in line with the building. So that was just a miscommunication, or just never communicated to us that we needed that specific color. So we figured to avoid that in the future, we would like them to do that side of it. And then we would come up and physically put the device on the wall after the fact.
Okay. So in reference to like the capacity, would, if we had 10 users with laptops in the courtyard, would they all be able to stream seamlessly?
Yep. There's a similar access points to what we have in our own buildings and in our exterior of the building. So I think we've hit 50 or 60 people at a time. I mean, right now we're on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
We have all of these, so
Okay.
it handles it pretty well. It's a robust
system. Got you. Thank you.
Any other questions on the program?
I'm sorry, just one more question. When will we know if we have the funds to do either one of those?
So to continue it, we have the funds now. The other ones, the digital inclusion grant is in its infancy. It hasn't, I think the application's due in October, but they're looking for a quick turnaround, so we would know by December if we have the funds for that. The IMLS one, I haven't heard that we do most of our grants through the foundation, and I'll have to check with Lex to see where that is standing. I know we applied for it, but I have not heard of any yay or nay on that yet. You're welcome.
If nobody else has any further questions, I think we can move on to our third item under new business. ACAP amended and restated revocable license agreement.
Attached is a draft agreement with ACAP to use office space at our Washington Avenue branch for Head Start classrooms. So pretty much the northwest corner of this building are 3 Head Start classrooms that are run by ACAP. In this user agreement, it's a good reminder, they actually pay for use of the space. ACAP will be using additional space. ACAP's proposal will now encompass about 3,000 square feet of the northwestern corner, and the library will collect $30,000 as an annual fee. This agreement is in as a draft format. It's being reviewed by legal. Originally, we had hoped for the board to vote on it this evening. However, after an email conversation back and forth with ACAP, Albany County Action Partnerships, I'd actually asked for the board to wait until October because there's some additional things that they want to adjust and we have to negotiate back and forth. But again, this is important for the board to discuss because it's a significant footprint, but it's also a significant amount of income for the library.
Any questions on the agreement as it currently stands?
Where exactly would the classroom be?
Well, the classrooms are here. They've been here.
No, like what, where?
So it's hard to explain. Third floor. Right by
Kind
our
of right
office.
above us.
No, this is a ceiling. This is one
Oh,
story.
that's right.
So right over there.
That's right.
So
It's
if
just
you were to take the elevator up from here to go to my office, you're actually in their hallway. And it's the classrooms on the right, the first space on the third floor on the right, and then kind of down a hallway. They have a space they are using for kind of their break room, their bathrooms, then a smaller classroom, and then an office for the ACAP coordinator.
Super cute watching the way to go party with you. Right?
If you think about the second floor, it would be the local history room, the two storage rooms on the side, and that hallway where the restrooms are.
Okay, okay. Thanks.
It's one of my favorite partnerships. It makes me happy.
And is this another one where they haven't had this agreement before and now they are going to have it?
No, they've had the agreement before. It's up for renewal. And since it's up for renewal, we have to now include the additional space that they're asking for.
Okay, I see.
And how much space did they have before?
I believe it was about, I have to look at the math, but I think 26,000 square feet. So it's not really a huge additional space. It's an extra bathroom and it's an extra space so that they can provide a break room for their staff.
It's actually in the document because it's redlined, so you'll see the previous square footage. It was 20,075
Okay, so a little more.
or 2,000. I'm sorry, 2,075. Not 20.
Any other questions on this policy? Or we will come back to it next month. Moving on to our next item under new business, legal RFP.
So attached is a draft request for proposals for the purpose of selecting a law firm to serve as general counsel for the Albany Public Library. The last legal service RFP was done in 2015, so we're a little behind on this, but in the policy, we have up to 5 years, but we typically do 3-year terms for contracted services. And the 2015 was a 3-year term that ended in 2019. So this would be for, this RFP is for services starting January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2024. This request for proposal is in a draft format. We asked the trustees to consider to move this to October business because we would like for the board to look at it, but we'd also like the executive committee to discuss it as well. We believe it's in their purview.
Any questions on this RFP? That is all right. We will look at it in the executive committee and bring it back at our October meeting. Our next item under new business is the 2021 schedule of service revision.
So task the first proposed change to the 2021. Sorry. Change to the 2021 schedule of service voted on by the board on July 14th, 2020. So we don't get mixed up. We worked on the last schedule of service. This is the scheduled service for the year we're currently in. The library administration is asking that the library remains open on Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. That's typically an all-staff training day. However, instead of being closed to the public, we'd actually like to be open to the public. The library administration feels that there's been sufficient amount of online training over the last year and a half, and that a full day of training by the entire staff is not necessary. The other change is the library is also asking for the Pine Hills branch to close at 3 p.m. on Saturday, October 16th, 2021, to prepare for the Friends and Foundation of the Albany Public Library Annual Literary Legends Gala. In the past, the library has closed the branch hosting the event early every year. We tend to do a revision around this time of year because of the gala. We're not always sure what day the gala is going to happen.
I have a question. With the turnover of staff, how is you said that there's significant amount of online training over the last year. How many of that staff were retained and how many are new? Am I saying it clearly?
Yeah, you're wondering what, I mean, we're probably within, I mean, this is very back of the envelope, and my back of the envelope is not always trustworthy.
Well, just keep that in mind.
So it's below 10%. It's probably about 7%. And so one of the things that all staff training and staff development day do is get everybody in the same room. And remember that we now have monthly all staff meetings.
Okay.
So we went over this with the services committee, Melanie, who's in charge of training. We went through this, actually, we discussed it at a supervisors meeting as well, and we just all feel
Okay.
there's been
So there
sufficient,
isn't.
even for newer staff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the proposed change? I will also take a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to accept the changes to the service schedule.
Thank you. Is there a second? Trustee Pryor seconds. Now, are there any further questions on the motion? If not, we can go to board docs for a vote.
Trustee Ray indicates she votes yes.
And the motion carries. The next order of business is the quarterly Board of Trustees evaluation results. Oh, were you going to pull it up?
Oh, I could share it, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm like waiting. Are you?
Thank you. Actually, I'll just switching between windows here. Okay, so Not sure how to go through this. There's a lot of questions. So we seem to, I believe 7 out of 9 trustees took the survey. We seem to have an agenda on topic, board members prepared to discuss. And then if we scroll down a little bit to the next page, one comment that we possibly need some improvement on, all board members were present or excused. And then on the next page, the meeting began and ended on time. 2 comments regarding a late start due to technology issues. I know this is tricky. We keep trying to improve upon it. So we're going to keep working on our technology, and if possible, if you could arrive 10 minutes prior to the meeting, when we really try to get set up with the technology, that would be really helpful. Most board members participated and no one dominated the discussion. One person thought they spoke too much. And then on the last page, somebody made a kind comment. Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions or comments on our quarterly evaluation? Any areas of improvement or anything anybody thinks we're doing well on? No comments necessary. Okay. Our next order of business is the POP update.
So the library is currently operating under the high transmission guidelines set in the previous update for continuation of service plan. The library administration, based on feedback from staff, has increased headcount at each location. So the administration does, under the new guidelines, does have the ability to set the headcounts. We have made them just a little bit higher, not much, but we did get some feedback from the staff that they felt that the headcounts that we had set under this was a little too restrictive, and we were getting some people waiting outside. So we've fixed that. There is one change we are requesting for the plan that is under the board. We would like to change in language for bathrooms. During high and substantial transmission, we request that bathrooms be moved from suspended, which is totally closed, which they currently are, to restricted. While the restricted mode, bathrooms will be, while under the restricted mode, bathrooms will be locked. So patron will need to go and get a key from a staff member upon request. And that it will be limited to patrons using the library for appointment services and other things of that matter, or at the staff's discretion. Bathrooms may be closed due to lack of facilities or community engagement staff to monitor them. This change is based on feedback from staff, but also recent studies on transmission via bathrooms. So I hope to God this is the end of my part of my career where I'm reading studies about public bathrooms. I have a feeling it's not. But as long as bathrooms are regularly cleaned and ventilated, so in other words, the CECs are going and opening the door on a regular basis, or staff are going and opening the door on a regular basis, and we have enough facility staff to clean them, then we can, they are a low risk to patrons. So really this opens the public bathrooms, which will make a lot of people happy. It does limit the people who can use the bathroom, and it does give us the ability to close the bathrooms when staff is short. So if a facilities person isn't able to come in, we would probably close the bathrooms, or if we don't have someone to regularly rotate through, we may have to just close bathrooms just because we don't have enough staff to monitor, air them out, and clean them.
Any questions or comments on this proposed change?
Not really on these changes. I think they're good changes. Thank you to the patron who wrote to us about those changes. I do have a question about the phases and when we change phases. So this, like the CDC dashboard that we use today, I think it said like 5.7%. And it looks like from the graph, it's been in the below 8 for more than 7 days. So when do we roll back or forward?
And remember that there's two metrics that they use before they change it. Oh, thank you. There's two metrics that they use to make the decision. And if either of those metrics are in the high number, then they don't change they don't change what they're indicating as transmission in the community. So the first metric is per 100,000 people infected in the community. The second metric that they use is percentage of positive tests. And this actually, one of the reasons why we adopted this is the question is always, is percentage of positive tests really a good indicator? It tends to be an indicator that there's more infections coming, but it doesn't tend to be after everybody starts getting tested. It inflates and then deflates because once everybody realizes everybody's getting sick, again, testing goes up. So the CDC guidelines are, they change what they say transmission is in the community based on those two metrics. And as long as one of those two metrics is still high, they won't move us out. So once you see the per 100, believe it has to go below 100 per 100,000 individuals in the community having an active COVID case. Once it goes below that, that's when we'll see us going back, I believe, in the yellow, back into the yellow.
So essentially what we're doing is we've taken the following daily numbers out of our hands. And think of it like pollen count, where you like the weather reports on the pollen count. We log on every morning and see where the CDC has the count. So that's what we're following. So if CDC has us in high, we're in high. If CDC has us in substantial, then we move to substantial after a 7-day period so we can adjust. Or 14 days.
And Stephanie is the one who checks every day.
We all do.
I know we all do.
Says 7 days. Right?
Okay, doesn't.
It's the footnote on the word metric.
I think the metric is a 7-day number, but we gave ourselves 14 days to change phases because we needed that time to adjust when things
yeah.
around the buildings and that kind of thing. So there's a 7 and a 14.
Okay.
The 7-day metric is not for the amount of cases in the community. The 7-day metric is for the testing. So the 100, again, right now we're, I believe 140, they didn't update it before the meeting. It was 148.26 per 100,000 people active cases in the county. And that number is a good number to go by, and it has been going down, which is good news. And we always look when the county does their announcements, and the county's numbers don't align with the CDC numbers because they're different reporting times. But if you look at the county press release, they always give number of positives and then they give number of recoveries. And we always look to make sure a good indicator, which we're seeing is number of recoveries are higher than number of positive cases. So yeah, we've been getting a lot of questions about these metrics, and it's understandable because we have moved away from just relying on positive tests, because as we saw, they were inflated once people started getting really sick again. We actually would have shut down by our original plan if we had gone by our original continuation of service plan. But we have to look at those two metrics. There is a link to it. You just pick New York, Albany County, and it will give you both of those metrics and whether or not they've gone down or up. The percent positive, I don't look at. It seems like it fluctuates really depending on just time of the, whether or not it was Labor Day weekend.
And if you look at the the full cost, there's the statement, the library will track the metrics for 14 days before adjusting library services.
And as a reminder, this current continuation of service plan is much less restrictive than our past plans, especially with this adjustment on public bathrooms. I also think it should be noted that our community engagement clerks are the ones who really facilitated this conversation. So we haven't got a lot of public feedback from it, and that's why I love that program, because instead of having security, you have people who are really engaging in the public and expressing their concerns. At this particular location, they were adamant about getting the bathrooms back open in one way or another. And they're also the staff who bear the brunt of us having open bathrooms. So I really just want to commend them. They've really put aside what makes their day difficult, understanding that they would like to see people be able to use the bathrooms. And I think that's commendable.
Are there any other questions, or I would also take a motion at this time.
I make a motion to adopt a change in the language for the bathrooms during the high and substantial transmission of bathrooms. Move from suspended to restricted, as noted.
Thank you, Trustee Robinson.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Dallas. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we can all go to board docs to vote.
Trustee Ray indicates she votes yes.
And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is our second public comment of the meeting. Has any public comment come in?
We have not received any public comment.
Thank you. We do not need an executive session. So then we go to our newer section in the meeting, housekeeping. The first item under housekeeping is a question from a trustee regarding minutes. Wasn't sure if you were opening. Oh, not a problem. Trustee Dallas wrote, sometimes trustees are simply listed by last name. Sometimes it's doctor and last name. Sometimes it's trustee and last name. Should there be a standard? Does anybody have any thoughts on a standard way of recognizing trustees in recorded minutes?
I don't know if there's a best practices standard out there, but I'm fine with just last names.
I'm open. I don't have a date. As long as we get the minutes of what we're talking about. That's my OCD coming out. I just think they're official documents and there should be uniformity. However you choose, just.
Any other opinions on the matter?
Standard, as everyone has already said, that just the last name is fine with me.
Okay, yeah, I'm hearing everyone say just the last name, so we don't need to worry about honorifics or trustees. Okay, so we're good with the last name. The next item under housekeeping, I spoke with Trustee Finn today, and he has notified me of his intention to step down from the board effective to Wednesday, October 13th, I believe. So he will attend our October 12th board meeting. He was actually, he wanted to attend tonight, something came up, but he will attend our October board meeting. But he has to step down after that fact. So I just wanted to notify the board that that letter did come in today. So now this will put the nominations committee into searching for another trustee to fill that position for the rest of the year. I actually have a few more items that I made myself as notes. The next one, we were going to discuss the recent change in law to the open meetings law. Meetings going forward, full board meetings and committee meetings, whether we're doing online or in person. Did you want to start that, or you want to start, or Bob, or?
Bob, if you want to explain it, it's not really changes.
I have a question. Wouldn't we typically have that in new business or not? Or those changes as opposed to dropping it down to housekeeping?
I didn't have Brenda's question. I'm sorry.
She's not aware.
The reason why I'm asking is because if we have more changes or any other changes, rather than having them drop down in housekeeping, I would like them to be in the agenda under new business. I don't think that should be housekeeping.
That's a good point. I had earlier conversations and I didn't realize it was left off the agenda. I suppose we could push this.
I mean, we want to know the information now, being that you brought it to the table. I mean, let's hear it now.
We have scheduled committee meetings already and stuff like that.
Bob, do you just want to give an overview of the bill that was passed?
Bill is literally a codification of what was in place during the executive order. I mean, it's actually written to refer to the business being conducted in accordance with the rules of the executive order. So it allows us to go back at least until January of 2022 to fully remote meetings, participation by video conference system, telephone, whatever, as long as we are able to stream it for the public, provide a live transcript as we're doing it, which of course we can. And it would allow you all to either participate fully remote or on a hybrid basis, which frankly is what most of my library clients were doing towards the end of the executive order. They were doing hybrid meetings, which, you know, I attended a bunch of them. There were some people who were more comfortable coming in, you know, would come in. Some people who were not would not, and they'd zoom in. At that time, masks were not mandated in buildings, so it was a little easier to hear people and see people on the screen. I suppose that's one argument for going fully remote, is that you'll have a more robust communication because you'll be able to see people talking and hear them talking. But it's your call. You can go back in that direction if you want to. I know that, you know, some of the public boards that I'm serving on, we've gone back to remote or at least hybrid. So
The county announced, I believe, today. County announced recently that it's going full remote. All of my meetings with the commission and the advisory board I'm on, they've gone to remote as well. So
The city is going back to remote as well.
we've set up the model here so that this was, you know, I want to give my staff some credit. They set us up because we knew we were at least going back to hybrid. And also kudos to the board for adapting to this. So from a workflow perspective, we're capable, because we've done it, we've gotten some practice, we're comfortable with doing hybrid, where most libraries have struggled, has been getting everybody used to doing it. This is our third meeting doing it. It's not perfect, but it's much better than a lot of other organizations. So we can do hybrid. I would say, my suggestion is committees go fully online because it just seems like we can schedule meetings so much easier with that ability. But a hybrid or an in-person full board meeting, I do think is conducive to getting people to interact and see each other. We didn't see each other for over a year. It definitely started to get weird, for a while because of that. So I do believe some in-person meetings of the board, I think is healthy for the board.
I agree. I like the in-person meetings. Two things. And it might be with people with disabilities. I have a disability. My lungs have been compromised by COVID. I know there are other people on the board who are going through and have immunocompromised thing. And I find it hard to hear people who are sitting over there. Sometimes, Sarah, I can't hear you as well. So for me personally, being able to do it virtually would, not that I will miss, but I see you. So I would appreciate a virtual or hybrid.
So I think in-person meetings are good too from time to time. I like the idea of doing committee meetings virtually for now, because it is easy to schedule. But I also want to point out that, Scott just called this hybrid in the sense that we're live streaming it, but it's not hybrid because we're all here right now. And when some of us are home and some of us are here, we'll have to wear the headphones with the mic. That was really cumbersome when we did that in June. So that doesn't sound like an appealing option to me. I think my preference would be to either do this for full board meetings or go fully virtual. And I think we could probably, do we have to decide that tonight, or could we decide between meetings? I'm asking anybody, but.
The board can't decide between meetings. You could delegate, or perhaps Sarah already has the authority as president to make the determination on her own. But if the board is going to decide, it can't decide between meetings.
Yeah, so I've already fielded the question a couple times in regards to committee meetings. There was a committee that met last night that I okayed to meet remotely, and there's a committee meeting tomorrow night that I approved to meet remotely. I was also told we can do this on a meeting by meeting basis. If committees want to decide, if they want to meet in person or remotely from meeting to meeting, the board wants to make a decision. Technically, I know in the past, generally, we don't like using our executive committee to make decisions, but I think that would be one way to make a decision between board meetings, is if the executive committee met. I prefer not to make a decision just myself on behalf of the board, but if the executive committee met, we could make that decision prior to the next board meeting. If people wanted to discuss this further.
So if individuals choose to stay home, or is it a choice that they have to go to stay virtual?
You could do hybrid. That's what hybrid is. Hybrid is some people in person and some people remote. And I heard Tom just say that he didn't like that because it changes the way you use technology, which may be true. Because if you have multiple people here, it's hard not to use headphones, or you're going to get the feedback issues.
I was just going to make the technology comment that yes, if it is a true hybrid, we would have to go to headphones to hear the people who are off-site in order to hear. And I do have staff monitoring the feed currently and keeping me updated on how it's coming through. And there are still, even with this setup, some sound issues happening. Certain people are not being heard as well as others. We are in the process right now of redoing the AV system in here, which would provide us, one of the things that we've included is a video conferencing, so no more individual mics. It would be one solid camera with room mics available, but that's not going to happen next month.
One other argument, for what it's worth, by meeting remotely, we're reducing our carbon footprint and we're doing sustainability.
Out of 5-year-olds who's at the school.
Yes.
So I guess let me pose this question. I thought I was hearing people on the same page as far as committee meetings go. Would that be accurate? Were most trustees saying that they would prefer completely remote committee meetings?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I am hearing unanimously from trustees that we would all support remote committee meetings. It's just the discussion of the full board meetings and you know, I'm hearing some very good points on both sides, you know, value to seeing each other in person, which we went a very long time without, over a year. And the, you know, cumbersome nature of technology. So I guess, you know, in order to make our decision prior to the October board meeting, I guess the options would be either make a decision tonight just for October. The executive committee can meet between now and the October board meeting and make a decision. We can continue discussing offline and in email as trustees. So yeah, I guess it's either, yes.
I just have a quick comment. It just seems like a healthy compromise would be committee meetings, virtual, in person, board. Half and half, why not? That's all I'm saying.
Everybody wins.
That would probably be my preference as well, though I respect Sarah's position very much.
Could I pose a possible third solution? No, okay. I was just going to suggest, would we want to consider aligning it with our current cost? So when things are high, we go fully remote. If things go down to substantial, we open it back up or no?
Nah,
Okay,
no, not interested.
just okay.
I know, I'm thinking. Click, click.
Yeah, I was just saying no to that because even if whatever decision we make, supposing it's going virtual and it accommodates a lot of folks, it shouldn't be based on that cost. So we should be able to come together however and try to agree on something.
I know this isn't a policy, but we can take a vote on this, right? Or would this just be a straw poll issue? And
Absolutely. could be a vote.
Can I ask one
Vote
question?
To go virtual, it's a little general.
And that's why I'm saying that you can't make a board decision after tonight. But I don't know that this has to be. It just has to be that someone makes a decision before this meeting.
Arguably, that is within the power of the president and the power to call meetings. Certainly, there'd be nothing wrong with delegating the executive committee, or the board could make a decision, either tonight for October or tonight for October, November, December, January.
May I just ask one question? What would be reasonable accommodations?
Well, this isn't really anything that this isn't employment. Okay, so the reasonable accommodation standard in that sense doesn't apply. It's arguably, you could argue it's public access, which is a slightly different view of that standard. But there'd be, the obvious accommodation would be that those people who don't feel comfortable attending in person attend virtually. I mean, that's not a heavy burden. It's just the concern that people have read or stated is that they'd have to wear a headset.
So the headset would be just for.
The people who are here, right? If it was a hybrid, right? So if you stayed home, no headset.
Presumably not.
You should have your speaker. That's your own personal choice, whether you want the headset at home or not. That wouldn't be required, but in here it would be, or else we'd get a feedback loop.
Yeah.
If this helps at all, I'm excused for the October meeting. So rather than belabor it now, people can think about it.
Thank you for that. Do we feel we need to take a vote on this, or I'm hearing we meet in person for the October board meeting?
Yeah, right?
See Matthew, yeah.
Right, that will be Matthew's last meeting. Okay, in person for October, and we can put it under new business then. Continue this discussion next month. Now for the 3 actual items I was planning under housekeeping that are short. So just a reminder that Rebecca Del Gaizo is our board clerk. I know we just got our new committee assignments. So as if you're a committee chair, please email her when scheduling committee meetings, and she can also upload items to your committee agenda on board docs when you're making your agenda. So that's just an informational item. I know we're all new at this and we're all learning. Second thing, please check your APL emails. Committee meetings are an integral part of our job as trustees. I know we were missing some contact information for some of our trustees. So no, it's good now. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I didn't have a chance to ask before the meeting. And yeah, we just want to make sure we have best contact information for everyone if we're not reaching you via email, another way to reach you. And then the last item I had under housekeeping was just going down our committee list and discussing if our committees, which committees will need to meet prior to the October board meeting. I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. So Audit and Finance Committee, do you foresee a meeting, or I know you have other committee work you're working on?
We foresee interviewing candidates for the treasurer position in the next 2 weeks. And we anticipate meeting the first week of October to recommend a candidate to the full board to become the treasurer. So yeah, we'll have 1 meeting plus the interviews.
Thank you. Executive Committee. I would like to meet to continue work on the trustee expectations document. That was something that was actually started a couple of years ago. But I think now that we have the committee descriptions, this was one of the things that just fell off. So I'd like to revisit that. Next committee, facilities. I don't believe, oh, go ahead, Brigitte.
Yes, I was planning for next month to discuss. I know Scott briefly touched on North Albany and the changes with the new daughter delays, but there's also some other facility activity going on, like at Bach or Pine Hills, that Adam had actually emailed me all the. So we'll just go over that form that he sent me, that Rebecca sent from January of 2021 to I can't remember the date, to 2025. So we'll discuss that.
Thank you.
Something else
And
we had on the agenda.
Yeah, Arlene, do you know when, this is inside knowledge, I guess, but do you know when UHLS will be making final decisions on division of library development grants, construction funding? Yeah, just check to see. So, because we probably will want to have that meeting after we know what their decision is.
Next committee is the nominations committee. And
We're meeting
you're working on the committee description and, okay, thank you.
When, so this evening, obviously, we learned about Trustee Finn, his resignation, and you mentioned the process of finding a new trustee replacement. So what is the time frame for that conversation? I mean, obviously, we can start the conversation tomorrow, but it's early, it's quick, right? Yeah, I agree. Okay.
The next committee is personnel. Jenna had to leave early, but the personnel committee does have our next committee meeting scheduled for 1 week from tonight. And then the next committee is policy and governance. October 4th, thank you. So I believe 1, 2, 3, I think that was 3 that are already scheduled. So just facilities and the executive committee need to schedule.
Finance, executive, and facilities.
In finance, it's not the committee meeting, just the interviews. It's both, okay. Okay, so trustees on those committees, just watch your emails for the doodle poll coming out, so we can get those meetings scheduled. And with that, those were my housekeeping items. Does anybody else have any housekeeping items prior to our next item of business? Seeing none, next item of business, adjournment. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn. And I will second it.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we can go to board docs to vote.
Hold on. I know you're excited. Did you already log out? Trustee Wei indicates she votes yes. Brigitte? Indicates she votes. Okay. 8:19. Can't find my controls. There we go. Thank you.